Welcome back to our community. I'm now talking with Sheriff John Pollak. Sheriff John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you having me in.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges that the Sheriff's Department is having, but we want to kind of get a little insight. You've been on the job for a little while now. I guess the general question is, how's it going? And maybe let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges. Do you like the job?
It's the job I like real well. It's been a real challenge. Of course, we've had some financial challenges thrown our way, which kind of put me behind schedule for things that I wanted to see done. In my first term of office, and the first 6 months, I'm just now getting to the point where I can start working on those kinds of things right now. So we've had a lot of challenge. Most of it's been adjustments to the large cuts and staff adjustments and patrol adjustments and things like that.
Well, I know that you talked a little bit about a millage, which, come to find out that it's extremely expensive to try to run a millage just for one thing on the ballot. Normally you'd have that dollar amount, $25,000 to $30,000 spread out.
25, 30,000.
And so the commissioners, I think, prudent in saying, well, maybe we could try a different way here.
Well, I think they're prudent in thinking that way. We need to think about it. I need to sit down with them, and we need to get what our expectations are for the future. I know theirs is they don't feel that they can support the staff at the levels that it was before the millage came along, and I understand that. But there are some things that we have to consider. If we're not going to go that much, then there are items and areas that have to be cut, like courthouse security maybe, or maybe patrol sizes. Those kinds of things have to be discussed, and that's what we're trying to do now is talk about those issues.
How many patrol do you have out on the road right now?
We have 9 officers on the road, what we would call on the road right now. One of those is a transport officer, and one of those is a grant officer. So he's an officer who just works for a grant that we have for secondary road patrol. Okay. So we take those 2 out, we have 7. Mm-hmm. And I have 3 of them working the day shift, and that's Monday through Friday from, it starts at 8. Actually, we start at 6 to 2, and then there's another one that runs from 9 to 5. Okay. So it's kind of an offset shift there. And those guys, they don't get a lot of what we would call traditional patrol in. They're busy running escorts to the courthouse and escorts to doctor's appointments and things like that. But when they're not busy, then they do. Mm-hmm. And then we don't have a night shift, an afternoon shift at all. State Police covers that for us. And then we have a midnight shift, and there's 4 officers that cover that shift alone. Mm-hmm. And they work 7 days a week, Monday through Monday, and on the midnight shift alone.
Okay. Now, as we talk about that, though, are we seeing an increase in problems out there? Are we staying about the same? Where is the crime level at?
Well, in our office, it appears to us that it's about what it is, what it has been right along. Mm-hmm. And we can thank, the State Police for coming in and filling in for us. They're doing a good job trying to do the best that they can.
And they're very visible out there. You can see them out there all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they've got the manpower. They're a 3-county post, so they can pull from other areas to fill in that gap. And that's been a big asset for us. Now, in talking to a couple of neighboring sheriffs, they're starting to realize that, that they're not getting the coverage that they had because they're having to come in and help us out. Mm-hmm. St. Joe County Sheriff Pollak was expressing to me that he's noticing some increases in crime over there. So, mm-hmm. It just depends on how long we can continue that and continue to burden the State Police with that extra patrol.
Mm-hmm. Does this affect the staff at the jail at all, then, or not at all?
Well, it has affected the staff at the jail because of the layoffs. We had fill-in folks that were on part-time status, and when the layoffs came, those folks had to be laid off before the full-time people were. So it was a trickle-down effect, if you will, and so that's caused a great deal of overtime at the Sheriff's Department. And we've had to, in fact, I've gone to the commissioners already, and they've okayed the addition of a couple of part-time folks to cut that overtime back. And that's working, although I still have a large amount of overtime. And I will go beyond my overtime budget this year, just because of that.
So again, by bringing on the part-timers, then your full-timers are not going to get that time and a half and that overtime, which should kind of offset each other.
It should help out, but then you got to keep in mind that we're sort of in violation of the contract when we do that. But the union has been good about that, and these folks, we got to give them a lot of credit because they've gone through a lot. and they're trying to work with us, but yet not be stepped on, if you will, too. So they've allowed this to happen, and they've given us some rules, and we're trying to follow those rules very closely so that we don't step on anybody's toes. And so that's worked out pretty well so far.
So where do you
Lots of
see?
challenges,
Yeah,
Tim.
well, that's just what I was going to say. Well, and it really comes down to financial challenges. I mean, you're not talking about law enforcement challenges, so per se, let's say, of you know, you've got different issues over here in fighting the crime. It's more about, well, we like to fight the crime, but we just need more staff
Right.
and personnel, and it really comes down to the budget cuts. Now, the budget cuts that comes from what, loss of property taxes? Where do the budget cuts all come from?
That's the hard part for me, Tim, is just trying to balance all those issues. It's financial issues, it's contractual issues, plus, you know, security is my main concern, for the security for the people in this county. So it's a lot more than just being short staff. It's like I said, contractual things that have to be dealt with. Community, I have to meet with the community and get their concerns, and how am I going to address their issues with what I have. So it's been a whole learning curve that I can probably say nobody's got the chance to experience in quite a long while.
Right, exactly. What about, where does the posse fall into this?
Well, the Posse and the reserves, a long time ago, they were put into the contract because back in the 80s we had a layoff situation then. And what happened was, in those days, the Posse and reserves could actually work the road. Today they can't do that, but they were put into the contract at that time to stop that from happening. So that's how they got into this mix. They had to be laid off just like a part-time employee, even though we weren't paying them. They, according to the contract language, they had to be laid off first, and so we had to follow that. And you know, in the union's defense, they're going to say, no, you know, you're not going to be able to use those folks.
Right.
And it wasn't that they were upset or wanted to hurt anybody in the community, but that was part of the contract. We had to follow it, and you know, money is money, and we can't afford to fight a union contract like that when it's pretty blatant or pretty explicit what they want.
So where do you go from here with the sheriff's department? Do you, you know, ask people out there just to be more aware, you know, of their neighborhoods and their surroundings and, you know, their property, and report things maybe a little more diligently? Is it something that you see more funding potentially coming down the road in some other kind of form or facet? Or do you just say, well, we're going to have to do the best we can and make do, because that's where we're at?
Well, it's kind of a combination of all that. We have the state police here, so if there's any issues that you have, don't hesitate to call 911 and call call immediately. It's easier for us to get out there and handle something that might turn out to be nothing than to let it go and let it fester and turn into be something much bigger. So the state has jumped in and helping us. We're trying to do the best that we can. We've got what we call a rapid response team that we've developed, so if anything like a major storm comes up, I can put a call out, and every deputy that's available, even the ones back in the back, will be put into a car and can respond. So we can have between 9 and 12 officers, you know, that we're fortunately corrections officers that we held onto, can be out there to respond. So we're working on things like that. I hope to be able to, and I think the county commission and I would sit down at some point and we'll work out a plan as to where we want the department in a few years, and start actually working toward that. You know, so that's where I'm hoping we'll get to.
And lastly, before we go, because it is you know, summertime, people are out on the lakes, does this affect the lake patrol?
This does affect the lake patrol in one way, and contractually there's some issues right now that I'm working with the union on. They were not real happy about the Marine Patrol being out there, but they realize that they have to be out there. We can't not have anybody out there.
You got to have somebody on the lakes.
Exactly.
I mean, you just have to.
We've got to have a presence out there. So we're working on that issue. We've got them out there now. The grant, on the other hand, the grant wasn't as big this year either. And so we're going to have a reduced number of patrol hours, and we're trying to spread those out. So the guys, if the weather looks at all bad, they're probably not going to be out there. But on the other side, this year they're going to be out there during the week once in a while, because we got a lot of complaints during the week after we would go off that folks would be out. So we're going to squeeze off a few weekends toward the end and put them out in the middle of the week once in a while this year.
Just kind of make everybody safe, and
That's right.
know you're safe out there on the lakes, and make sure you are safe as you're driving your boat out there. That's for sure.
That's right.
John, anything else before we go? I mean, really, we talked a lot about financial issues, and we've talked about you like your job and all that. Is there anything else that you would want to touch on right now?
I think just mention that the community's been really supportive, really been behind us. The Marine Patrol is a good example. We had, cases where we used to have catch them out without the right PFD on, and we'd have to send them off the lake for the day. Today, or earlier this week, the North Chain of Lakes donated a bunch of jackets to us, PFDs. We now can give those folks a PFD, let them enjoy their day. They can give it back to the Sheriff's Department at the end of the day. So the community's coming around, really been supportive, and things like that keep us going.
Well, we look forward to having the sheriff with us here maybe in a few months, kind of get an update and see where you're at again.
Happy.
And doing a great job. Congratulations with everything that's going on. Just so far as running the operation the best you can. I think that's the best way to say it.
I'm hoping so. I think so. We're on the right track, I hope.
Well, John, thanks for being with us here today.
You bet, Tim, anytime. Thank you.
Sheriff John Pollak with us here today on Our Community. I'm Tim Hart. We got more coming up. Local programming at its best right here on Q1.